Over the last several years, midge fishing has become real popular. It only stands to reason because it's a highly effective way of taking trout, especially in the western tailwater fisheries or just rivers in general across the country. And for those that fish lakes, we already know that midges constitute quite a bit of the trout's diet. So let's just get into it here and start tying a few. To start off with, what I'm going to be tying is what I call the floating Midge Pupa. And what that is, once the midge gets up towards the surface, it kind of hangs in the film, and that's what this is meant to represent. Or if you want, you can put it right down on the bottom of the river itself. We're going to tie a little tag here of some CDC for the anal gills. And then we're going to have a biot body, a wing case out of CDC, and then the front gills are also going to be CDC. We're going to be tying this on a 2487 hook. So let's give it a shot here. Start off with, we're going to be putting in our hook. And since this is a curved hook, I like to have the eye down a little bit, just to make the shank a little more parallel as we're working on the back part of it. Then we'll get our thread on here and wrap back, just like so, and then we're ready to tie in some anal gills. For that, what we're going to be doing is taking some CDC, and take some out of here, and we'll just peel some of these fibers off the stem here. And we just kind of bunch it all up. Then we'll even up the end right there so we have a nice even tie-in area. And we'll just tie that in. All you need is a couple turns just to hold it for right now. And then we're ready to tie in our body material, which will be a turkey biot. And since this is going to be black, that's the reason I like to use the turkey. It just makes for a lot longer biot to use. It's a lot easier to work with versus the goose. So we tie it in tip first, and as we do that, I'm going to have a little notch to my left. And what that means is this side of the biot is going to be more translucent than the side over here on the right. So as I wrap this forward, I'm going to have a nice smooth body. Now if I was to have this turned around with that notch to my right, this kind of fuzzy edge would be to my left, and as I wrapped it forward, I'd have that kind of a ostrich appearance when I wrapped it forward. So we'll just attach our hackle pliers here, and we'll wrap forward. For those of you that have problems wrapping biots, one of the reasons might be just the type of hackle pliers you're using. The type of hackle pliers I like to use, they have kind of a narrow tip to them. And these type work a lot better for your biots versus the ones that have the rubber grip on them. Then we'll snip off our excess, make sure it's tied down good. And we'll just trim off this tag a little bit. Now instead of just leaving that blunt cutoff area, what I like to do is just round it off a little bit. This makes it look a little bit better in your fly box. It doesn't look quite so artificial. Now that we're getting ready to work in the thorax area, what I'll do is I'll stand that hook back up a little bit. Now we're going to select a few more feathers of CDC. Since this is a fairly large hook, we're going to be using 3 feathers. Most generally when you're going to be fishing this, you'll be tying these probably size 18, 20s, and 22s, and then 1 or 2 feathers is more than enough. What I'm going to do is even up the tips here, and I'm going to lay it up here to measure the length of the hook shank. And I'll grab it with my left hand, then I'll tie it in right where I tied off the biot. Then I'll wrap forward a little bit. And then we're going to trim off the excess. Just like so. And then we're just going to cover up where we tied off everything. And if you want, you can use dubbing in your thorax area. But like I said a couple minutes ago, when you're tying these, they're going to be fairly small. So really all you need for your thorax is a little bit of a thread base, just like that. Now what I do is just kind of pull all the CDC up and kind of fluff it. What that's doing is straightening out all the fibers in there. And I'll pull it straight over the eye and tie it down. Now I'll take a few more wraps to make sure it's tied in there nice and good. Then I just kind of flare out this CDC a little bit. Then I just kind of stroke it back. I'll bring my thread up front, take a few wraps, and we're ready to whip finish it off. Pull that CDC back, and just come in and whip finish it off, just like so. Take off our thread. Now what I'm going to do is just pull that CDC forward, and I'm going to just trim it just a little bit longer than the hook eye. And I can just kind of flare it out a little bit. That way it just looks a lot more like the natural when it's sitting out there on the water. And if you have a few scragglers, just come in and trim those out of there, just like so. And there you have it, a floating midge pupa. Now this one's tied on a curve shank hook, but it can also be used on a regular dry fly hook like a 101 or 100 hook, just so you have that straight shank hook. And when I like to use that one is especially when I'm out on the lakes. It looks just more like the big chironomids.